Hi everyone, today we're going to be making some ornaments out of a slab of clay. Got some different cookie cutters here and different items to cut shapes with, some stamps, and some different items that we could create texture with. I also have something to cut the clay with, as well as a brush and some water. I also have parchment paper and saran wrap. These items are optional. First, what we want to do is roll the clay flat. And I'm using 2 pieces of paper, especially because my clay is a little bit wet. And the paper helps to absorb some of that excess water. If your clay is too wet, it's going to be really difficult to create with. So you're going to want to make sure you take some of the excess water out, or maybe roll the slab the night before. You're going for less than a pancake thickness of the clay. If you feel a part that's too thin or uneven, you can always cut it off. Check your thickness. If it seems too thick, roll it more, and you can kind of monitor it that way. Next, we're going to start to put the designs on. So you can do it 2 different ways. You can press some texture into the clay slab, and of course this makes the clay slab a little bit thinner because you're rolling it some more. So you're going to want to factor that in as far as your thickness of the clay, and that creates a beautiful texture. You can also use stamps. Be careful when you do. If your clay is really wet, it may stick to the stamp. So just kind of be careful and cautious about that. Mine gets stuck a little bit in the middle, so I had a little part that was left behind. But that's okay. We're only going to be using part of the textures. You can also take paint. What we're using here is tempera paint. It works really well with the surface of clay because they're both organic based. Acrylic is plastic based, so you wouldn't want to use that type of paint with it. And I have a stencil here and a sponge brush, and I am just using that to create some beautiful prints on top of the clay. And I'm using Christmas colors because we're looking to create some holiday ornaments. And then I'm going to choose my cookie cutters. You're going to want to choose cookie cutters that don't have too complicated of edges. They're just much easier to cut, and they also are easier to kind of make sure they're neat and tidy around the edge. So you can cut out an ornament so that it has the pattern on the entire object, or you can kind of do a half and half, which is what I'm going to do here. I just kind of am going to get creative with how much texture and how much printing are on my ornaments. You can do this any way you want. This ornament is a little on the thick side. I think normally I would make it a little bit thinner, but what you want to do is take your fingers and go around the edge and just kind of make sure that's neat and tidy, or you can take your brush and your water and you can go around and tidy up the edges and any other little smudges that way as well. Don't use too much water or your clay will get a little too mushy. We're going to cut out a hole next, and you can use a straw to do this. I have a clay cutting tool, but you can use just any old regular drinking straw and just kind of twist it and you'll get a really clean hole. And then I have a number stamp that I'm going to stamp the year into. So I've got one made. I made a bunch of different clay pieces. They are going to dry overnight. I also added a little bit of paint on top of some of the textures. Just while it's still wet, it's okay. Just be careful not to smudge. When you're cutting anything out with paint, also be careful not to smudge. And then this is after they've dried overnight. I did add some white paint to some of them, and I added some little sort of burlappy ties to it. I think they look really earthy and cute. So those are some of the objects that I made out of my slab of clay. I could have made a lot more, but I just kind of made a few. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope that you make some really fun ornaments for yourself, friends, or to give as gifts.